Hi, I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. Bill's Bullpen is an opportunity to find out what's going on, both in the community and the region. With me today is Tim Lydon. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me,
Tim,
Bill.
what do you do for the town?
So I started about 7 years ago in the planning and engineering departments, and now I run the engineering department.
Okay.
Yeah.
The engineering department. That sounds pretty special. What are some of the projects that are going on? You could start with the top or the bottom, and either work down or work up.
So we're not short on projects right now.
Where are we getting the money for all of this?
So that's the big part of it. So the engineering department, my fund is one of the smaller funds. I mean, I work in concert with all the other departments. That's the thing about me. I work with the other department heads just as much as I work with residents that come to my window. For the most part, I have a small budget, but the special projects I work on are a little bit more grant driven. We've leveraged a lot of CPA funding for some of the special projects to get grants. Our CPA group and our open space and our community preservation, they've been very gracious to a lot of the causes I've been involved in. So I could definitely start out with that. But for the most part, the biggest project I have going on is the Bourne Rail Trail. It has a lot of excitement and a lot of traction right now. We began the process with a feasibility study in 2017. It really gained momentum in about 2018, 2019, and today we have a 25% design for Phase 4 down by Falmouth and a 75% design for Phase 1 by Gray Gables.
As I recall, that particular project, there's three parts to it.
Four.
Four? Oh, I've turned my head and there's another one added. Now, what is the most difficult part of that process? And you might talk a little bit about how are the phases timed?
So it's funny because it's a 6.5 mile project. We thought breaking it up into phases was going to be the best thing for us. You make things more manageable, less costly. To give you a perspective, the rail trail all in all could be a $20 million project. At least that's how it started a few years ago. Costs have obviously gone up. But what I will say is what was your original question?
The original question was, what's the most difficult, most difficult part about it, and some idea of.
So
you've said that you got a 25%, grant to start the design piece.
Sure. Obviously, the money's always kind of tough about it. But the thing I'll say is the most difficult thing that I'm finding is working with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The state owns the property.
Good luck with that.
We have people leasing the state's property in the operators in Mass Coastal. And when you get DOT involved, every single division, engineering, utilities, right of way, all these people get a bite at the apple at these projects. So I think the coordination between, even Cape Cod Commission has played a role in the feasibility study and things like this. So we have the region, the state, the federal government, everybody weighs in on what this project is and what it's going to be. I think working with these other agencies has been the most difficult. And even though it's a $20 million project and all the problems you have with that amount of money, I still think coordination with government agencies is not something people are unfamiliar with.
Well, when Glenn Cannon left, he was a direct report because I was a commissioner. I was also on the Cape Cod Commission as a voting member, and the Cape Cod Commission's involvement is what I would say keeps the environment together, and to me that's an important role. But as far as these other agencies, one of the problems that we had in dealing with Boston, over that time, was the fact that they were in Boston and they would come visit down here,
right,
and they bring what I'd call an urban prejudice to what we were trying to do down here.
That is a great term, and I'm probably going to steal that from. That is a
You got
really
it.
good term. I think Boston, it's just like in the country. It's not one size fits all, and you can definitely say that with Boston. I think it's funny that the Bourne Rail Trail is not something that's on the desk of DCR. I mean, you see the Cape Cod Rail Trail over coming off from the Sagamore Bridge through Barnstable and Dennis and Yarmouth. That's a DCR maintained property. Right now, if we were to build the rail trail today, and as it stands, we would maintain our own trail. So I think there would be a huge benefit making DCR a project partner here. But their stance is they don't have adjacent properties, whereas the Cape Cod Rail Trail, they have adjacent properties. So the maintenance and the ongoing operations of the rail trail going forward is something we have our eye on.
You better have it on, because the last time I took the Shining Sea, on a bike, was that there were roots growing underneath the trail, and it was like going over a washboard.
Right.
So it did interfere with both the enjoyment of the trail, and also there was a safety thing because you didn't know whether or not the roots, especially somebody who was of a certain age, would. I don't go on the bicycle very often anymore, but that you'd be concerned about your stability as you're going on. So maintenance, to me, is a very important part of doing things. Is when I had project responsibility, there's three parts: the cost of getting in, the cost of maintaining, and the cost of removal. Those three elements are all part of it. So you have to have an exit plan as well as an entry plan, and then a maintenance piece.
And maybe the local maintenance might be a little bit more responsive. That's the first thing I thought of when you're saying that there's roots growing in these things. So maybe DCR being involved could be a bad thing, but from everything I've understood about the Cape Cod Rail Trail, I think DCR being involved with their properties adjacent has been a good thing. And I kept joking that DCR doesn't know where the Bourne Bridge is, but they know where the Sagamore Bridge is. So I'm hoping they can maybe come around. We had sent them a letter, I think 2 years ago, and they had some changes at the top. So I'm hoping maybe now with the new changes we can start that conversation again.
And you have to keep maintaining that conversation. I did live on the rail trail in Harwich, and there were some difficulties when they decided that they needed a fence, because I had permits, I had approval from the town to have a cut in order to get up the stairs, and I had to put the stairs in and then over. And of course, all of my neighbors checked to make sure that, since I was in political life at the time, to make sure that I paid for it and not the town.
Of course.
I tell you, they would drop a dime on you in a heartbeat.
Of course.
It's all of that.
So another challenge for the rail trail, we want to maintain the track being on this corridor. At least the state does, as well as the federal government has interest as well. The fence going between the track and the trail has been somewhat of a contentious issue. A lot of people, I think, right now are very, it's misunderstood that they can just walk over the railroad tracks. I mean, technically that's a trespass. So this fence being introduced could change a little bit of the movement that people are used to. So I think making sure we have formalized crossings every so often to make sure people have funneling points that are safe, because that's DOT's biggest thing, is making sure that we're building a user experience directly next to a railroad track and introducing new users to this corridor, that you're not introducing a whole realm of safety precautions.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the fact that you've got steel on steel, you have sparks.
Yeah.
So there's an important piece where you have to maintain what I'd call low-level vegetation, on the and cutting the grass, because that could be a concern as you go forward.
I mean, the track bedding's in pretty good shape for I think the lack of maintenance, but it seems like all of a sudden, now that we start doing this project, the railroad's showing up a little bit more to do a little bit more things and maintenance than we're typically used to seeing.
Well, that's a good thing. Okay,
It is a
so
good thing.
and what is the? It's as I recall, when I was on the Cape Cod Commission, it's about an 8-year window between the time of initiation and completion.
Right.
Okay, where are you with regard to an estimate of when you start and when you complete?
So you said you thought there was 3 parts. There's actually only 3 parts that have begun. They have project identification numbers, PIN numbers. We filed the P&F form for phase 1, I think, in 2018. So it's been 4 years. We're on the construction schedule for 2025 for funding from the CMAQ funds up at Boston, Commonwealth Massachusetts Air Quality Funds. They definitely want to try to get more users off the roadway and on bicycles. Obviously, we're a bedroom community. We don't have a lot of commercial entities abutting adjacent to the rail trail. But I mean, you have, Shore Road that comes by Monument Beach. It's going to go through Barlow's Landing at that point. It'll go through Katomet. I mean, there's little pockets of areas that have small commerce. We call them village business districts in our zoning. But I think you see the benefit of introducing users to those areas. I think a big thing we need to push for is making sure that our pedestrian accommodations around these centers, around the rail trail, are built up and making our little village centers a little bit more safer for people to use. I keep calling this rail trail a spine. We have Bourne Conservation Trust, we have open spaces, we have beaches directly adjacent to the rail trail. I mean, this highway is going to be a pedestrian highway for people to get up and down the south side. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, I had the bike people on, about a year ago, and it did sound, like all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the P&F form was filed for phase 4, I think, 2 years ago. So it gives you kind of a ballpark. So 2018, we're on the construction schedule for 2025. It'll be completed by 2026. So you're right. 8 years is about that time.
Yeah.
The second and third phases are our most challenging. They're our lengthiest. So phase 1 basically gets you to Great Gables. Phase 4 is to get Falmouth through the town line to Katomet. We would have started there, but Falmouth didn't know if we were players or not. So having that conversation to make it start is almost like, are you guys for real, So we started phase 1, we got that rocking and rolling. I think that showed them that we were serious, and then phase 4 getting that charged. I could see phase 4 really, we turned our attention to phase 4 as soon as we knew that Falmouth was in it, because we didn't want to let them down either, and they don't want to let us down. So it's really good. We filed that P&F for phase 4 together as a mutual project, which is a little tough when you get grant funding, which I'm still trying to talk to the Falmouth folks about, but that'll all sort itself out, but it's coming together.
It's very important to have coordination and communication between different towns, because every town, of all the 15 towns on the Cape, every one of them will tell you we're unique.
I know. And I always say that I think Bourne is one of the most unique just because of our geography. The canal cuts you in half, the base kind of cuts you off. You're in the Upper Cape already with all the transportation infrastructure, and sometimes I have accused DOT of just wanting to get people through Bourne. I think I heard that rallying cry.
Yes, I know.
Picked up that
They're
flag
the
and
ones
ran
that
with
say, that Bourne is the doormat, and some of us believe it's the golden doorway.
Right.
And so, and there was some talk, years ago, where the merchants in Hyannis were concerned that that money that comes to them would be, if you built up a commercial presence in Bourne, that we would keep everybody from getting that money down in the central part of the Cape.
I think
and there was some merit to that,
Absolutely. I think that's an important part of the discussion. DOT spends a lot of money on getting people through the town. And that was my whole thing with DOT. I said, you guys funding with the CMAQ funds for phase 1, can we get that same funding for phase 4? I mean, you guys spend money to get people through Bourne. Can we spend money on us here at Bourne? Our residents as well as our tourists, going to the beach and riding a bike. That's basically a full day. That's a full day of leisure that you can really enjoy. So that's my hope with the rail trail.
Okay,
But
yeah. Getting off the rail trail,
Right.
do you have anything to do with the fire station?
So the fire station, they pulled us all in to do a little bit of the feasibility of a lot of the land uses. That's where I get involved. I think this town does a really good job of getting committees together to kind of spearhead the project. Mm-hmm. They more or less become the project managers in those regards. I try not to harp on it too much, but we are a short-staffed town, I'd say. I'd say our staff is smaller than
Say lean but not mean.
we're special forces, mercenary. No, not mercenaries, but we don't have a large army. But I would say that we are, tactical and nimble, and we punch above our weight. I can't say enough, and I was hoping to say it at some point on your show today. We have a small staff, but I really do think we punch above our weight. We get a lot done with a little amount of people. We make sure that the coordination between departments isn't something that holds us up either. I've seen it over my 7 years as to really see the departments come together, where some departments over time get siloed because you get into your work, you really do. You get into your stuff, and you could really just sit at your desk and just try to get your stuff done. But I've noticed when departments come together and bounce things off each other, you get better projects or you get better reviews. And I know that's an expected thing for government, but it doesn't always happen. Just because you're trying to get through your day or trying to get through your topic, you might as well do things yourself, but you don't realize that somebody else might have a different perspective than you. And I can really say that today our staff is collaborative and creative, and we're getting things done in a way that I didn't see that we were getting them done 6 or 7 years ago.
In commercial life, the water cooler discussions were very important.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
and I think that applies to any kind of organization.
And you collaborate with who's in your proximity, so I end up working with conservation or planning more than maybe building or DPW, but we make the time to see each other when we need to see each other, and I think it's really been fun in that regard.
The good part about that is that if there's a spirit of commitment to communication, you don't have to wait for the town manager to bring you in and say, you guys got to start talking to each other.
No, it was really nice to see Miss Marlene McCollum come in and see that in us. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we got this thing going.
Don't screw it up.
Well, not even that. It's just like you can add your thing to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been what's been really exciting for us is as new people, because we had the same department heads for 25, 30 years for a good long run, and we slowly brought new
experience.
we
they
had
bring
great
to the table is very important.
institutional knowledge is
Oh, yeah.
it's invaluable, and to see people retire and people replace them and keep a cohesive togetherness that we had.
Well, that comes from the leadership that the people with experience have had when they bring people along to make
Right.
sure that they don't lose that sense of continuity and commitment. That
Totally.
that was there.
So that was my thing. I mean, I had a couple mentors at the town hall that really took me under their wing and really showed me how to get things done. And it made me such a better employee. And it's funny because here I am, I'm 37, I've only been there 7 years, and I feel like I'm a senior person taking people under my wing and making sure they know how to get around and how the government operates, because some people might come in with really technical background.
Well,
they may not know the grants or the finance side,
The first thing you learn in terms of the difference between being in, let's say, market-driven business and public service is that public service money is all expense. Okay, private money is for making a profit.
Right.
So it's a real distinction. The big thing for taxpayers is not spending money you don't have for things you don't need.
Right.
So it's very important that that people are in place that are working for us that that basically have that sense of what do people want and what are people willing to pay for. So that balance actually delivers what I call a good product at the end of the day.
That's a big rallying cry for anybody that's starting out in government to understand. You have your constituency that has needs, but you also try to have cohesion with whatever plans that were put together over time as your guiding document. You get a project like the rail trail, or you get a project like the wastewater expansion. There's always going to be naysayers, and I think the toughest part for us to weed through is the loudest voices just saying no, or is somebody saying no and saying, can you look at it from this angle? Because that's productive.
Well, we have a lot to learn from the differences of opinion. And
Right.
at the end of the day, iron becomes steel when you basically beat it down.
Totally.
And get it and understand that flexibility is beat into it, and it takes a lot of energy and time to do that.
Right.
Okay. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not clear as to what exactly you're doing on the fire station.
I'm not doing much.
Okay. Let's get on to a project you are doing something with.
Right, so we have the comprehensive wastewater management plan. I think there's,
Something close to my heart.
right. So that's a little bit more driven by our impaired water bodies. And that's something that the town really hadn't turned its full attention to in a long, long time.
Yeah.
I think it's something that now that we're stepping into, it's something that almost, you see all the anxieties with it, but I almost feel anxiety relief because now we're going to start understanding what our problems are.
Okay.
So
There's
we
an
have
11-foot drop from one end of the canal to the other, and some people have argued that because of that drop and the current that's set up, that if they do dump water into the canal, it will essentially wash out into Buzzards Bay and be diluted. I'm not one of the ones that agree with that because
And I don't think you're alone. I think the vote at a recent town meeting expressed as much. I think we had a referendum on how this town feels about installing an outfall at the canal.
And I might point out that when Boston did it, when they rebuilt the Deer Island facility, they were concerned about not only secondary but also tertiary, because they were looking at the time in New Jersey where they were seeing fecal material being washed out from New York because of the way the ocean currents were working. So it's definitely a concern that I've always had. And when I was a county commissioner, we initiated the wastewater management committee, which had representatives from all 15 towns. So it is something that's very important. We rely upon the pristine and nature of our fresh water, not just our salt water, and anything that that might interfere with that is something that should be of great concern to all of us.
I think the CWMP process has been really good for the educational component. I don't think people understand what they flush into their toilets goes into their water bodies.
I used to tell that to fifth graders, and they go, ooh.
The septic systems we have all throughout town are what are the major contributors to our poor beaches and our poor water bodies there, even our freshwater ponds. The phosphorus that we might introduce would create algae in our freshwater ponds, or our coastal embayments are a little bit more impaired by the nitrogen. Nitrogen, even through fertilizers or stormwater, those are things we're going to try to mitigate and capture, But when nitrogen gets into our groundwater from our septic systems, it doesn't exactly attenuate in the soil as it's going down towards the coast. So that's something that people need to understand.
You
That
also have to understand that when they're using fertilizer, more does not mean better, okay? Because if you hire a professional, he's only going to use the minimum necessary in order to in order to fertilize. And yes, nitrogen does come from the air, and yes, there are contribution to it, when you don't have vegetation that goes down to a down to a lakeside. There's all of that, but septic systems, have to be of great concern.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the CWB process, we're going through that now. Our consultant environmental partners, I'd like to give them a shout out. They've been incredible during the process. They came with many years of experience.
Who's the engineering firm?
Environmental partners.
Okay.
You'll hear their name a lot. I mean, we've started working with them, and I think we've branched out into stormwater. I'm going to have them do our nitrogen source identification report this fall for our MS4 report. They're also working with DPW, I believe, for the asset management for the road pavement. There's an individual there that worked with a previous firm. They've been so easy
on road
to
pavement,
work with.
one of the things that I was always wondered about is that when you're designing a road, sometimes you design a road so you don't have what I'd call a transfer of water through the through the material into the road bed, and you have if you make an underlayment so that you don't have the permittivity set up, you have the water going to the side, which creates a stormwater issue.
Right.
Okay, now what are we doing about stormwater in this in Bourne?
So, you look at the history of, any town in our region, or even New England in general, a lot of the goals, when these towns were being built up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, right through the 80s and 90s, we were building roads. And our main goal was to just get the water off the road. That was the main goal.
Oh, yeah.
But now we're realizing that the water that's coming off of our roads is impaired. So now we're at a point where we need to mitigate all that infrastructure and make sure that we're identifying where there are pollutants and creating new infrastructure that can treat those pollutants.
Okay.
That's a challenge.
Yes, it is.
And that's where our GIS and computers. That's when that computers really can come in big time.
You're certainly, making a hole in the idea that, that you're drawing your breath and you're paying, waiting for your pension.
Yeah. So no, like I said, we're not short on projects right now.
Okay, let's. We've covered a little bit about the fire station, the bike trail, wastewater management. What else?
What else? So it makes me think Monday and Tuesday, August 1st and August 2nd is the One Cape conference. Everybody on the Cape comes together. One of the
I used to go to that when they were getting for free, but I haven't gone since then.
They're even charging the town staff, so we're going. But we're working with the Cape Cod Commission on the low-lying roads. It's a grant that they got. I forget who they got it through, but there's 3 other towns. I believe Orleans, Wellfleet, Bourne, and there's another town as well. We're identifying a few roads to be examined, and I think we're going to get it narrowed down to 2 roads that we will have conceptual engineering designs to identify how we can make them more resilient for climate and sea level rise and groundwater elevation changes. And we're going to try to identify stormwater and salt marsh restoration during these projects. That's me speaking as a Bourne staff outside of the Cape Cod Commission's goal. Cape Cod Commission really just wants to take a look at these low-lying roads. You look at the nature of Bourne. It's a crooked coast. One of my favorite bands from Falmouth. You look at the jagged edge and you see all these different islands, or you see all these causeways. All these causeways, some of them are man-made. Scraggy's, even Emmons Island has some sort of a man-made component. These are the sole access points. So during flooding or washout, if these roads aren't, if there's something we can do to reinforce these roads or rebuild these roads, that's something I feel like we should be turning our attention to. So that focus right now, reviewing the low-lying roads, and like I started to talk about the computer technology, running the models to show how many people would be cut off from service is an important thing for us to know. So working with the Cape Cod Commission has been very helpful for me in the past few years, because things like the low-lying roads, I think, is a good use of their time and a good use of my time. because at least we have that data, maybe have conceptual designs. If I wrote a grant to FEMA and said, hey, this is a project that I think would be worth it because we have X, Y, and Z, criteria, would you guys want to fund $4 million to rebuild Wings Neck? These are things that could be on the cusp in the next few years that we kind of have working in the background and behind the scenes that I would like to, that was something I definitely wanted to share. But we've gained traction with that, and that's something I really believe in, because I don't think people understand that if the natural gas was to be infiltrated with groundwater, that they might not have natural gas for 3 weeks while that is being completely rebuilt. It happened in Saugus 2 years ago. There's people during that cold winter a few years ago, and they didn't have any heat, and they were displaced from their homes. That's something we need to make sure Eversource and the grid they're looking into these things. So this low-lying roads projects kind of had us to be able to look in the mirror and also turn the mirror on other people, so.
Well, utilities, have a great concern about delivering their product, because they don't get paid unless they deliver.
Right.
So, they are concerned about that. And there was always a lot of piety, when I worked for Edison years ago, about how important our customers were,
Right.
and how we wanted to maintain and convince them of the reliability of service. Then they had the big staff cuts, so all the people who used to do all of this work and give you the 100% reliability.
Yeah.
It started going to statistically significant numbers. So that all and of course when you're dealing with public agencies, it is funded in what I would call limited funds, because there's always infinite need and only finite resources in order to take care of it.
Right.
So in any case, we come to sort of the end of this, and I'm going to ask you if you have a takeaway that that you would want people to have about what you're doing and what you think that what direction you think the town should continue to go in.
That's a heavy question. That's
Of
a heavy
course it
question.
is.
My takeaway.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see the public involvement. I think when I came in 7 years ago and seeing public input 7 years ago was not up to a standard that I felt this town needed. And now I feel like there's voices in this town that are educated and are putting input into the projects that we're working on. And I see that transfer of understanding and that transfer of knowledge, and I think we've gotten great projects because of that. And I think Bourne is on the cusp of really seeing a lot of transcendent projects, a lot of this government money that's out there at the federal level. I think we're going to start seeing our projects get some of that money. I just want to keep people focused on how can we make Bourne better. I'm not trying. I don't think.
Well, I think I'll stop you right there and say, making Bourne better is a concern for all of us.
Right.
And if they wanted to give you input, how would they do that?
Oh, I'm always open. I don't think I get the same foot traffic at my window at the engineering department of the town hall that I did before COVID, but my phone line is open, my email is open. I have a lot of information on my engineering page. I don't get that out there enough. I would love to, for the projects I spoke with you today, I have a lot of PDFs and a lot of guide and documents on my engineering page.
There you go. Okay,
so please visit the
so
engineering
folks,
page.
if you want to find out what's going on, if you want to participate, you've got an invitation to do that. And thank you very much, Tim, for coming in. We've been talking to Tim Lydon about what's going on in projects here in Bourne, and I believe although we've covered some important things, there's a lot more that's going on, and I would encourage everybody to do that. So with that, I want to thank the viewers for tuning in and finding out more about what's going on here in Bourne. And you've been watching Bill's Bullpen, a production of Bourne TV.